And most people are just going to use the actual property without thinking about it like we just did. You may be familiar with these. You may at one time have remembered them, but the first one is called the product property. The second one is called the quotient property. The third one is called the power rule or the power property. And the fourth one is called the change in base property. Now I'm going to show you a little bit where these come from. And it comes from what I just pointed out, how to solve 2 to the x equals 3. Okay, so let's say we're multiplying two things, a, b. Okay, if we change this to base 10, then 10 log a represents a, 10 log b represents b, right? And what do you notice? When you convert to base 10, you add the exponents. So if you take the log of a times b, this is really converting to base 10. You add the exponents, right? So when people log both sides, this is really what they're doing. It's just over time, mathematicians, they just skipped that step. And then they just applied the log as a function to both sides. But this is where it comes from. When you log something, you're actually converting it to base 10 and using those exponents. Now, if you logged it with a different base, you're converting to that base and using those exponents. So this is really why that property exists. Same thing here. If we just converted these to whatever base, and I'm just using base 10 because it's common. That's why we call it common logarithm. Well, we need to change and use the logs, and notice when you have a quotient, you subtract the exponents. Right? Okay, and so that's why when you log a value that's a quotient, you're changing this to the base 10 and using the exponents, then you would subtract. Okay, so again, that's where these properties come from. And this step is usually skipped. So people just apply the property of the logarithm. Okay, and then we got the power property. Okay, and the power property is where, again, the same thing, and I'll just use the letter R. Okay, well, if we convert the original base to base 10, then we'd have to put this as 10 log A. And now notice what happens. We multiply because power outside parentheses. So when you log something that has an exponent, you're changing it to base 10 and using the exponents. So this equals R log A. So in other words, the exponent multiplies to the log. Right? And vice versa. If you multiply into a log, that becomes the exponent, which is why when we did that, -1 can multiply. And notice this is just a reflection across the x-axis. Right? So that's, I think, what I wanted to point out. When I mentioned it, I'll show you something. So that's how these things are unique. You can convert them rapidly just by using these properties, and this in particular. Okay, now the last property that's very useful is called the change in base property. All right, so that means we have a log using a base that's not common, something other than 10, and of that value we get the exponent. Now on your calculator, you only have 2 buttons. I say calculator, you know, these days Sometimes we use other versions like apps. And so the reason on the TI, 10x is over the log because those are the inverses of each other. And then the one right below it would have ln, and right above that would be e to the x. So these are the only buttons you have that are going to get you logs. So any other base we can't do. So we got to convert this. The only way we can do this is by converting to one of these bases, and we're going to convert to the base 10. That's the easier way to do this. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, let's go ahead and rearrange this. So the base has the exponent, and that equals the value. Okay, now let's log both sides. As soon as we log both sides, we're converting to base 10 and using the exponents. And remember the power property? The exponent multiplies to the log. And then you divide. Okay, so now we have a way to do this. Okay, the exponent is equal to the log of the value divided by the log of the base. So if you're doing log base 3 of 15, there's no button on our calculator that's going to get that, but we just change this to log 15 divided by log 3. And then we now can do this. Now be careful, there's no division of log properties. That's not log 5. Okay, don't get confused with the log of 15 over 3, okay, because that is log 15 minus log 3. That is not. All right, now think about it. When you have logarithms, that means exponents. Is there a property where you divide exponents? No, there isn't. There's only a property where you subtract, and that's because you were converting a quotient using a log. This is the division of two logs. You're not converting a quotient using a log. All right, I know that I've seen that enough. So it's probably going to be something y'all might